building the resilience of this community. Jack and I have been here volunteering quite a bit, and I started my family about 8 years ago in Santa Rosa, Sonoma County, and we've always loved the beauty of Lake County, but have really grown attached. We obviously haven't lived it like you have, but have really grown attached and committed to being a partner in Lake County. So we'll talk a little bit about that, as well as what Lake County can actually achieve through community choice, and it's really big, and it encapsulates everything that we talked about. But first, community choice. So community choice, distilled into a nutshell, is your community's right. It's a legal right set out in state law to control where energy comes from and what kind of energy it is. And it's a right as well as a protection. So the state established community choice to protect local communities. So it's not a kind of a far out program or untested or untried. It's really a right and a protection for communities. The state law that establishes it is AB 117, and later on the legislature passed what's called a code of conduct because the utilities didn't like community choice at first. Again, reflecting how the state views community choice as a right and a protection, put in protections for communities exploring community choice. CCA, community choice, is a default program, and this is an important point. So when a jurisdiction adopts community choice ordinance and moves forward with the program, everybody's automatically in it. Now, everybody's got the right to say, no, I don't want to be a part of it, and it's called opting out. And so you can step out of the program and return to PG&E, but everybody is automatically enrolled in the program. An important thing to remember is the utility is still a partner. And so all the poles and wires, that is all continuing to be maintained by PG&E. If you have a disaster, PG&E still comes out, responds as they did in this instance. They were an active responder and partner, and that still remains in place. And PG&E is responsible for maintaining the reliability of the system. So a question comes up, well, is my power still going to come on if I turn on the lights? Yes, absolutely it is. PG&E still makes sure that it's possible. And there are significant benefits to community choice, and we're going to talk about each of these. Environmental, obviously, because it's an avenue to increase renewable energy use, but also economic benefits and local control benefits. And so where a community wants to build resilience, wants to reinvest itself, that almost is a better opportunity for community choice than communities that just want to increase their renewable energy use. There's also an urgency with community choice. There's an urgency on an environmental front, but also that economic front. It's heightened in the case of Lake County, but it's present for everywhere. We are facing a climate crisis, and we cannot do anything to resolve that by waiting for PG&E to make choices on our behalf. And so community choice brings that control back to your community to make some of the most significant impacts to greenhouse gas emissions that a community can make. It increases renewable energy and then captures that revenue. So if you think about how you're paying your bill every month to PG&E, you're paying, let's just say, this much for your power, right? Instead of paying PG&E that much, with community choice, that comes right back to your community. There's some expenses to operating the program and making sure that the program works, and we'll talk about how we're involved in that. But that amount of revenue stays in your community, and you can put that into renewable energy, you can put it into rate discounts, or you can put it into other programs, like sustainable building programs, right? Bringing power back to communities and control back to communities. And so it is extremely attractive throughout California. I should say that community choice exists in other states as well. Some states are 90% or so community choice. So again, this isn't a wild idea, a new idea. And I mean, this map, even though we did it 2 weeks ago, is already out of date because the interest in community choice is really catching fire. However, there's 3 programs that exist in the state. Sonoma Clean Power, Marin Clean Energy, and Lancaster Energy down in the south. So you got to ask yourself, if community choice is so great, right, and so many communities in the state want it, why are there only 3 programs? And that's because there are significant challenges in creating community choice. The first is around economics. In economics in a couple ways here. So first of all, until now, a community had to be pretty large, 150,000 people or so, to be able to support a program. And what I mean by that is that money that instead of going to PG&E is coming back to your community, that money's got to fund all of the work that it takes to operate that program. And so until now, again, a community had to be about 150,000 people to be able to generate enough revenue to hire all the staff and to fund the launch and the energy purchases and so on. And we'll talk about in just 2 seconds why that's changed. And then the second part of that is, outside of all of that revenue that you needed to operate the program, it takes a heck of a lot of money to actually launch the program to begin with. For an example, Sonoma Clean Power needed a $10 million loan to get going. Lancaster looked for a loan and couldn't find it, and so they had to dip into their general fund and use several $1 million out of their general fund. And for a lot of communities, taking out a big loan or dipping into the general fund just aren't viable options for one reason or another, either political, choices against more debt, or just not having enough money to dip in there. And so you had those 2 big financial hurdles preventing communities from standing up. And then you had the second big challenge in terms of expertise, and that is expertise in clean tech field. That's expertise in actually going out to the wholesale market and being able to broker energy purchases. It boils down to the legal and regulatory side. So there's all of these staff components that go into it, and then all the regulatory challenges to operate a program. And so on a daily basis, for example, you have to talk with the state and make sure that there's enough energy on the grid for everybody's home. You've got to make sure that the meter reads are being put on your bill appropriately. So there's a lot of specialized technical expertise that goes into the program. So these 2 things prevented many communities from having a program itself. And so we saw that, we being California Clean Power, what is now California Clean Power, and we said, community choice is such a good thing. 88% of jurisdictions in this state are too small to have a program, to be able to fund a program of their own, and that's just unfair. And so what can we do to help spread community choice? And so we are now the only organization, the only company to put our money where our mouth is and to fund CCAs, to actually pay the cost out of our pocket to stand up a program, to pay that millions of dollars to collateralize the energy purchase. And we take care of this piece too, the expertise. And we bring our own staff. We're actual individuals. We bring our own staff who have decades of experience in the utilities industry, in the legal, in the financial, and the government field. We have a tremendous board that I'm going to talk about in just a little bit, who are connected to a lot of the aspects of community choice. So something to remember about community choice, right? It's a government program, it's an energy program, it's a heavily financially regulated program. And so individuals who come and say, well, I can consult or I can tell you how to do it, are really selling you short. Right? If you want a program stood up, you need to bring all of these pieces together. And we do that both through our staff and our board, but also through our partnerships. And so we have a partnership with ED&S, one of 2 companies in the state that actually provides that meter service. We have a partnership with SunPower to provide rooftop solar, utility solar, and distributed generation solar to the communities that we work with. We have a partnership with a firm called Macquarie Energy, and they help us go out to the wholesale market and make sure that we're getting the lowest energy price available for communities we work with. We have a partnership with an advocacy firm in Sacramento to make sure that we're watching out for communities, making sure that there's no regulation and no law that comes down to prevent community choice. It's sort of on the bottom here, but it's actually the most important partnership that we have is with First Community Bank. Getting back to that financial component of community choice, First Community Bank is the only bank to lend to start a community choice program, right? And that was Sonoma Clean Power. And so, because First Community Bank is a partner, it's actually the owner of First Community Bank is one of our board members, is the chair of our board, right? We have this intimate knowledge of what it actually takes financially to stand up a program, and what it takes on an ongoing basis, how all the dollars and cents work. And so that partnership is, arguably the most important partnership that we have developed. So a little bit more about us. You saw who we were, we saw our partnerships. Our mission is to give communities their power back. And that's really at the heart of community choice. We're also a benefit corporation and a certified B corporation. And what that means is we have both a legal obligation as well as certified B Corp is kind of like certified organic, right? We have a third-party validation to say that, to look at what we're doing and to validate that we are looking out for the community's best interest. We're not just trying to maximize our own profit. We're trying to create both a social and environmental impact, as well as a financial impact. And so the services that we provide, just to be very crystal clear about this, we provide all of the startup and initial operation funding. Right? So no loan is needed, there's no deferred cost, there's no actual dollars out of the door for a community. We don't require a guarantee from the general fund or any other fund. We believe in this so much that we're just putting up our own capital for it. We provide a full service option, right? And so a jurisdiction, a community doesn't have to go out and try to find the legal expertise and the regulatory expertise and somebody who's worked with utilities before. We bring all of that through our staff and through our partnerships. The infrastructure, that's the partnership that I'm talking about. So the infrastructure behind the day-to-day service, right, to the data transfer with the utilities and the meter reads. And one very important aspect of that full service option is all of the control and decision making is kept in the hands of the community, right? So we provide staff and infrastructure to the jurisdiction. The jurisdiction still makes decisions about what rates are, what renewable energy is used, how to invest program funds. All of that is still left in the hands of the jurisdiction. And finally, an aspect of our service is both transparency on finances and the environmental front. In finances, we provide all the financial information of the program in public view, right? It's a public program, so no information should be kept from the public, fundamentally. And then on the environmental side, we prioritize local renewable energy. And that's local both to your community, to Lake County, but also to California. We just believe that investing in local resources, both local to your community as well as within California, is the best option to take. And we will always tell you where energy comes from. So, I talked a little bit about how we put up our own capital, but I want to talk about how finances work and how we actually make money, right? Because we're a company. If you imagine the blue person up here as you're the ratepayer. You pay your bill to PG&E. Again, you still pay your bill as you would. You see very little change in your bill. That money gets split off. First of all, you're paying less on your bill. But that money gets split off. It goes to PG&E. They keep what they have to maintain the grid, and they send to your community the remainder, right? And that's held in a secured account for Lake County. And out of that come just a few costs. The cost that you have to pay for taxes out of that money, the cost of the energy itself, and then we charge a small fee to operate the program. Everything that's left comes directly back to your community. So everything that's left you can use to increase renewable energy in the coming year, to decrease rates, or to hold aside to invest in sustainable building, to rooftop solar, to further low-income and senior programs, to clean up the lake. Any priority that your community has can be funded through community choice. And it's not an either-or question, right? You can have money left over for priority, for investment, and you can also have further rate discounts, and you can grow your renewable portfolio. So it's really how you want to balance those three benefits. All right, so what's in it for Lake? Well, the rate savings, program revenue, and local investment. Those fundamentally mean for Lake County, upwards beyond $2 million could come back to Lake County. And that could be then distributed throughout, again, rate savings, local investment, and your renewable portfolio. The more you have of one, the less you have of other, and you just try to balance to reflect community priorities. But there are there's a significant amount of money that is going out of this community every month as you're paying PG&E. Renewable portfolio. You can increase, so right now you're receiving about 27% renewable energy from PG&E. That can automatically increase to 33%, and you can have an optional 100% level of service as well. And you can have a baseline of 50% renewable, right? So it's really where you want to invest that program revenue. But the bottom line is you can reduce the GHG emissions that are coming from Lake County today, by going forward with community choice. And then on your local resources, you have one of the largest renewable sources of energy in the country, at the geysers. And you can invest in local power. That means local jobs, it means local renewable energy. And then CCA programs, right? Both financial and environmental. On the financial side, you can do a lot. You can do programs that, again, incentivize rooftop solar. You can do programs that clean up the lake. You can do programs that incentivize green building. You can invest in disaster preparedness and recovery services. So there are a significant number of things that you can do with program revenue. We call CCA a platform for local investment. Right? And then on the environmental side, again, you can invest in these local resources, right, that have a multiplier effect, both on the renewable as well as the jobs side of the house. So getting a little bit more into what you can do on the financial and the environmental side. These are the latest numbers that I've heard. They could be more now. I got this from Senator Moore. So 5% lost in property tax revenue, 12% lost in sales tax revenue. So for disaster recovery, you can invest again in, first of all, replacing these sources of revenue for your community right off the bat, because I know that these equate to slightly under what a CCA program could provide to Lake County. But again, you can also begin to invest in disaster preparedness. I think these come from a local paper. These are from when Jack and I were. I think this one is from you and that one's from me. That's a Clearlake Senior Center, and that's, I don't know, this was Moose's Lodge. So that's an area of opportunity for a CCA to invest. We talked about sustainable home building, and these pictures aren't my ideal of a sustainable building. They certainly don't take care of cob structures and entire structures, but it's just an example, right, of what you can do. You can invest, you can incentivize home building in a sustainable way. That includes, this actually has some rain catchment and rooftop solar and reflective roofs to keep your home cooler. But again, another area that you can invest. We talked about resilience, right? Building, these pictures reflect energy resilience. But I think resilience, in my sense of that word, are investing in the sort of the infrastructure of your community, right? And so that's investing in school programs, it's investing in environmental programs, it's investing in care for seniors and disabled. So all of those things around resilience you can do through community choice. Again, community choice is really a platform. And then local environmental support. I mentioned cleaning up the lake a couple times, and I mentioned that because I know it's an issue, and I know it's a priority that that the board and that others have tried to address for a long, long time. And simply finding the money to do it has been exceedingly difficult. And so, just as an example of what you could do, you could seed a fund through community choice, hold out some money from an annual cycle of revenue, and let that revenue grow, and then use that for environmental mitigation for the lake, and not give up future revenue to do other things. And then finally, on the economic development side, again, I mentioned before, economic development is perhaps even more impactful to some communities than the environmental side. And you can set up community choice to both attract as well as make it easier for business to be in your community. You can do that through targeting rate discounts to small business. You can do that through providing grant incentives for energy efficiency and kind of retrofitting programs to make operational costs lower for businesses. So all of these things you can do, and if we're so fortunate to be a partner here, we can help you work through what all of these things look like. It's part of the expertise that we bring. So next steps, you've heard enough from me, and I'd really like to have a conversation and answer your questions. To your point, all right, I want to have a conversation.